amazingly fun science. My name is Dr. Erica. I am so happy that you are joining us today. All week we've been looking at the ocean and how climate change is changing our oceans. So I have actually two projects, which if you haven't done with us before, you should go check out our YouTube channel, check in with those projects because we are going to go over those today also. And then today we are also going to look at how warming oceans will possibly change the currents in the oceans, and we'll see that with a fun little hands-on activity. What you need for that activity I'm going to tell you right now, so if you need to, you can run and go grab it as we talk about our other experiments. You need some sort of like clear low dish. I'm using just like a Tupperware dish. You want it to be glass because we're going to put fire underneath it, which is also a great reminder that if you're a little person, make sure you have your parent with you while you're doing the fire. You're gonna need two like cups or mugs, something that's low that we can put our dish on top of, but can also put our little candle underneath. All right, so we're gonna need to make sure that it's stable and safe, but it's just gonna raise it up. And I would suggest glass also, just because anytime I'm dealing with heat, I like to make sure that all the stuff I use is safe. I have some matches to light a little Tealight candle. If you don't want to use a Tealight candle, you could probably try this experiment with a hairdryer underneath the glass instead of the fire, and that probably will make it work for you as well. You need a sort of leafy herb. So tarragon would work, oregano would work, thyme would work. I've got sage today. Any sort of like leafy, light sort of type of a spice, not really like the rosemary or like the powdered cinnamonies. And then we need some oil. And that is all that we need for today's activity. If you're a patron of ours, you should have the printout that has sort of the instructions for today, along with some additional activities that you could do as a little bit of a research project. If you find that you're really interested in how climate change is changing our oceans, there's a couple fun little research projects that you could do and to extend this project a little bit more, which is awesome. Which is also a great moment to mention, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can always know when we go live. Check us out on Facebook, and if you want to support our fun science as we're going through this crazy pandemic, you can always do that at patreon.com/rosieresearch. We love making science for you guys and also taking requests. I know Naomi mentioned maybe a cool request would be special effects. So that could be a fun one. Maybe we'll be doing that after chemistry. I've got to put my mind on it. But whatever you guys are interested in, definitely email them to me, and I will see what I can do to get a nice, fun 2-week unit for you guys. All right, so this week we're looking at how climate change is changing our oceans. Next week, we're going to look at animals in the ocean. So we have an awesome low tide walk with my friend Sarah from the Seattle Aquarium, and she'll be in on Zoom on Monday for our field trip. So make sure you check that out and bring all of your interesting ocean questions. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll be learning how sharks float and also learning how squids stay safe. So that'll be really fun. All right, so a couple of our past projects. On Monday, we wanted to look at how climate change might be changing our oceans in terms of ocean acidification. So ocean acidification was what happens when we have carbon dioxide in our atmosphere and our air, and it mixes with water. And we've actually done this experiment before, so you can check out our YouTube channel with purple cabbage. If you blow bubbles in purple cabbage juice, it will change the color of the juice, which is super cool. And it shows us that it actually got more acidic. So all of the stuff that we put out in the atmosphere as it mixes with the ocean makes it more acidic. And we made a little experiment to look at that, where we actually did it with vinegar. We made an acidic ocean with vinegar and salt water. And we put a shell in here. And this shell, the first day, was a whole, complete, and happy shell. The poor thing.
Maybe show the comparison.
Yesterday, yes, here is our comparison. Yesterday, our shell had a big hole in it, like a hole the size of my thumb, sort of like the width of my thumb, a couple inches. And today, you might be able to see, I'm going to spin it around for you guys, so hopefully you can see a little better. One, there are some shell pieces that have gotten so small, it's getting into fragments now. It's a word we use for small pieces. We've got fragments of shell that are so small that the little bubbles of carbon dioxide that's happening as we have this reaction between the vinegar and our shell are actually able to make it float. So this shell up here is a little fragment of a shell and it's floating. But then down below, you'll also notice I don't have a whole shell anymore. It is completely broken down, that shell. So it's in 2 pieces. If we consider this little fragment up here, it'd be 3 pieces. And I still see some bubbles going up every now and then. You might be able to see that on our video, which tells me that my reaction is not complete. As it goes through the reaction, it's going to make my ocean that's inside of here less acidic. It's starting to bring it more towards water, so more basic, but it's sort of at the price of my shell. And we talked on that video a little bit about how that can really impact our marine creatures. Any crustaceans, so crabs, clams, lobsters, all of those things, shrimp, are going to have a lot of trouble building their protective gear because of that extra acid that's in the ocean. So I'm going to keep that going. We'll see what it looks like after the weekend on Monday when we return together, which will be kind of fun. If you were taking notes, we've got our sort of note thing here, and I'll fill that in for you guys who've been following us and taking notes together. So we've been doing observations because scientists, we love to make observations. And here are my observations after day 2. I'm going to say that I have multiple pieces because that's a little surprising to me. I have multiple shell pieces. I was not expecting that it would break in half, and that really shows me how important that's going to be. And I've lost a lot of shell. So a lot has been reacted with. And we will see maybe on Monday, maybe it's still reacting, maybe it's not reacting, but I still see no change in my regular seawater. So in my control, because that's my control. All right, so if you've been doing observations with us about that ocean acidification, you can take a moment too and write down your own observations that you see with your shell. We had some great observations in Zoom yesterday. A lot of people were noticing that their shells actually lost the colors. And that was really surprising, that lost the colors. So maybe that's something you would want to report on too. And then yesterday, our other product that sort of needed a little bit of time to go through was we looked at how climate change and the melting ice in the North Pole versus the South Pole, which one or ones would cause sea level rise. So what we did is we put some water with ice in the Arctic, because the Arctic is like floating ice. And you'll notice here is my line for where the water initially was after I had my ice in there. You'll notice it's kind of the same. And that's actually what we expect. The Arctic, the ice and the water of the ice is already in the ocean. So our ocean levels already have that water in it. However, in Antarctica, the ice is not actually in the ocean. It may look like that because all we see of Antarctica is ice, but underneath the ice of Antarctica is actually land. So what we had done here was we actually built our little land Antarctica mass. We added some water and then we put our ice on top of the land. And you'll notice that initially it was sort of down here, and now it's up here. I'm going to do a little F for final. So my level of sea rise, that's maybe 1 centimeter. I had about 1 centimeter sea level rise right here. And that sort of mimics about what we see in some areas right now around the world. We see that much sea level rise in 1 year, which is kind of crazy. So if you saw sea level rise in your Antarctic project, that is what we expect, because we had the water outside of the ocean and then we're adding it into it. It wasn't already inside the ocean. So that's kind of a cool little thing, that Antarctica is really what's going to be contributing to our sea level rise. All right, so today we want to learn a little bit about how climate change and warming of the earth, or even cooling of the earth, if we started cooling, would change our ocean currents and what that would mean for creatures. Now, our ocean currents are really important. There's a lot of creatures that use the currents. They ride on those currents to be able to migrate, to go from one place to another. That's how they travel. They're maybe not super great swimmers, but they can move really long distances by just catching on to that ocean current. Ocean currents also bring food. They also bring oxygen. I mean, I know if I was a fish, even though I could breathe underwater, which is amazing, they still need oxygen. So if they are in an area that doesn't have it, they would need the current to come bring some fresh water, fresh oxygen. Just like if we're in a house for a really long time, it doesn't feel very good, right? We've breathed in all the oxygen, we start feeling, oh, then we go outside, we get the fresh air. Ocean currents are kind of like bringing fresh air into those little homes of the habitats, and it brings across the nutrients. It's really, really important. It also makes sure that it moves warmth or coldness throughout the oceans, and some animals rely on that. So there's a lot of things that we rely on for ocean currents. And one question is, will these ocean currents change as the earth warms up? Which is a great question. You might want to take a moment to think about, I wonder what will happen if, as the earth warms up, do I think the ocean currents will stay the same? Or do I think they will change? And if you think they will change, do you think they'll change a lot or a little? Do you think they'll start moving faster, maybe slower? Do you think they'll change directions? These are all things that you can think about, and you could pause the video and you could think about that and you could write it down if you wanted to. And then when you're ready, we can set this up. So to set this up, I'm going to take my two, maybe you have cups, maybe you have bowls, two items. I'm going to place them face down so it's nice and stable. If it's already stable, that's great. And then I'm going to put my little dish right on top of that. I do want to make sure that I have enough space for my little candle, or if you're going to be doing a hair dryer, you have enough space to get the hair dryer under there. So I'm going to put my candle right under like this. And then I'm going to fill this up partway with oil. All right, so oil is going to kind of be more like my ocean water. And the reason why I like to use oil for this is because it's easier to heat up oil. It heats up faster than water. So you can see sort of the effect a little bit faster. And then to see what's happening in the oil, I'm going to add this herb. Because right now, if I were to look at the oil could have currents in there and I can't see them, right? Just like often in the air has wind, which is like an air current, and you can't really see it unless you look at the trees. Then you can see it at the trees. This is going to be like our trees. It's going to be what helps us see what it is. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of this in there. You don't have to put a ton. Just want to sprinkle it in. And then we're almost set. I'm going to add a little bit more. It's coming out really slow for me. There we go. Mine's a little bit maybe too light. That's okay. We'll be able to see it as it's going. So once you've added that herb in, and you don't want to add so much that you can't see between things anymore, or so little that you can't see much at all, we are going to just light up our candle and we're going to let it heat up that oil. And we can look, right now everything's really stable. Nothing is moving. But when I light it, we're going to be able to see what's happening. And I'm actually going to really quickly move mine a little bit closer so that we can get a top-down view for you guys. And as I do that, I'm going to light my little Tealight candle. Make sure you have an adult with you if you are not feeling safe. It's always really important. And then, once my candle is lit, I am going to put my experiment over this oil. And we're going to just wait. It's going to take a little bit of time. We're just going to wait and see what is going to happen. All right, and this is also a great time if you want to take some notes. You can start be like, all right, this is what it's looking like. Nothing's happening. You could time it if you wanted to time something. But don't go in and stir it right now. Because if we went in and stirred it right now, as I'm telling you guys not to, you would start to move the things and we wouldn't know if that movement was from us or if it was from the change in heat. Now, the way that this is going to be working is that, in fact, if we have the top down, I'm already noticing something. Look how quick that happened. These guys are moving away from the candle. It's moving, it's already creating a current that's pushing away. Because as that oil heats up, it's getting bigger and bigger. It needs a little bit more space. It's having so much fun. It needs more space to bounce around. And it's trying to spread out. And as it's spreading out, we're seeing that spread, which is a current, in the sage right there. And we can keep going and keep heating and see what happens, because as it sort of heats up and spreads out, some of it will cool down. And then what will happen then? Will we start to see things? Do we need more than one heat source to make something rotate, which is a great question. Now, there is going to be an end to this experiment when all of the oil gets like a little bit too warm. Then we won't be able to see the effect as much. And then you could see new currents as you take the heat away and it cools. And then you would be able to see a cooling current effect, which is kind of cool. But right now we've seen it really sort of spread apart, which is really interesting. And you can decide how long you would like to look at this. There are some pieces down here that I'm seeing are coming up towards the surface. So some pieces that were sort of down a little deeper are coming up towards the surface, while others I'm noticing are sinking. So I'm noticing, as I look really closely at my sage, there are some little pieces of sage that are rising up. And in different spots, little pieces of sage that are coming down. And they're riding up in the really hot areas, and it's coming down as it cools down a little bit. So that's kind of cool to see that happening too. We're seeing how those changes in temperatures would really change how nutrients even move, right? Even just localized change in temperature will change where our nutrients for our fish or for our whales or for our barnacles might be in the ocean, which is really cool. And I also think it's kind of interesting that I kind of see it as like a little line right here, which is kind of fun. And it is really cool just to sort of watch it as it goes. Now, if you really wanted more mixed in, you would probably want a heavier herb than sage. Mine is not mixing in super well. I could try to force some in, just like that. And I'll just bring this little glob close, which might help us see a little bit better what's going to happen also. I'll add a little bit more to it, which is really cool. But it's really interesting. I do see these currents. You might see this sort of coming this direction, and sort of underneath where it's warmer, things are getting sucked in. So on the bottom layer, I see some going this way, and then up above that, it's coming that direction. So I have this tide that's sort of going one direction lower in the ocean and the other higher in my ocean. That's really cool to see too. Hopefully you guys are able to see this on our close-up. This is
What if we put like a piece of white paper behind it?
like underneath where the fire is. Sounds like you guys are maybe not able to see it super duper well. Let's see if I can, maybe I can make a modification for you guys to see this. Now, if you're doing this at home, you'll have a great view. It's a little trickier on video because some of these things are really small. But maybe we could just add, oh, I see. Underneath the whole thing. Here, I'll pick this up. We're having a momentary change so that hopefully you guys can see this a little bit better. All right. There we go. Let's see how maybe you guys will be able to see this start. Now we're going to want to let it start to warm up again. But you can see some of these guys are sort of all moving this direction, which is interesting. And it's starting to pick up some items in there, which is also really cool.
Much better.
Better? Okay, great. So yeah, I can see these guys are sort of moving out that are really high up. But if you look further down, you'll notice there's almost like this little line of them that are just waiting to go on this ride where they come up and they go out, which is really neat. So it's sucking things in at the very bottom and then pushes it up and it starts to move out, which is cool. So it's a really fun way to see our ocean currents. And you can see how they're starting to act over larger and larger distances, right? So as our climate change is happening and maybe certain spots get more heat on their oceans and it's affecting certain parts more, it will start to have longer range implications on everything.
What would happen if we added another heat source?
Ooh, great question. We could try that if we wanted to. Evan would have to go grab a Tealight from the garage. They're right by the bikes, by the front bikes, on the ground, because that's where I have a whole little blue bucket of Tealights that I just got. Everything is in our garage, my friends. We have so much science in our garage. It makes me really sad that we're in a time that we can't have in-person classes because I have so much fun stuff ready to go. But we will We could even move our heat sources and see what that does. All right, so it sounds like he has a second heat source. So let's move this one over here. And what we can do is we'll put this other one right down there. Let me get this guy started. And then we'll put this one right down, maybe right over here. And let's see what happens as we have two things heating up. So we have a heat source over here and a heat source over there. I'm going to add a little bit more, sort of on, ooh, that's a lot more, on these little areas. And we'll get it so it goes in a little. Just like that. And we'll try to make it stop so that it's not going because of me, but we'll start going because of the ocean currents of heating it up. Now, changes in the ocean temperature that were kind of like what we're seeing now are what do drive our ocean currents also. So that is a factor that's currently making our ocean currents the way they are too. So it's really a question of what do we think extra heat will be doing. This is super interesting. I feel like this would be a great calm jar too. If you're feeling really stressed out, you just come and watch your ocean currents. That's something that I know I would enjoy doing. Now I can see up on this one up here, it's just starting to get the heat places, and I'm noticing that because it's starting to split the herbs right there. So I can kind of see that. I also am noticing here that one interesting thing we saw where it was sort of like suck it in and then shoot it up and it would kind of go out. That is starting to happen on this one. Sort of right there, you can kind of see right below, it's sort of shooting them up. So it's like sucking them in and shooting them up. These guys are, I've got some going this way, I have some going that way, and that's also starting over here. So now we're gonna have multiple currents that are gonna sort of blend with each other, and it'll be really interesting to see how they shape sort of my little ocean that's right here. All right, so we're gonna keep these on as we go into Zoom so we can keep watching it. It's a really interesting activity. And I really encourage you, if you really are interested in the oceans, check out and maybe study what the ocean currents are like right now. Study a favorite animal and see how the ocean currents will affect that, because you might be surprised on how ocean currents affect things all the way from plankton to massive whales. So all scales of magnitude are going to be affected by these currents. So that's really fun. And I want to say thank you so much for joining us this week as we studied the impacts of climate change on our oceans. Next week, I can't wait to go dive into some creatures and critters and make sure to bring your favorite questions and the things you've always wanted to ask somebody who's really knowledgeable about the ocean. You can do that on Monday. It's an awesome job too, so you can ask her all about her job and what she does and why she loves it, which is kind of a fun way for you guys to see real scientists in action. All right, we're gonna head over into our Zoom room for our Zoom friends, and we will say goodbye to our YouTube friends. We hope you have a fabulous weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Bye, friends.